Lupin definitely doesn't seem to be in the best of health, at least at the end of the first quarter. The company's Q1 earnings failed to enthuse the street. Ekta is here to tell us why.
Well, the fine print with regards to at least the commentary which is coming out from the conference call has been largely positive for Lupin. So, for example, the domestic business just about grew around 5% this quarter, and the management, however, is expecting it to recover and in the entire FY17. Not only that, with regards to the margins this time round, in fact, there was a one-time expenditure which took place with regards to Gavis, which is not expected to reoccur going forward, and that was one of the reasons why the margins were impacted at around 29%. Separately, however, the US business, remember that it was aided by Glumetza generic, which is a diabetes drug, and the exclusivity ended in the month of July itself. They did face some amount of lower prices on Glumetza as well. And with regards to the base business pricing pressure, the management has said that it has settled as opposed to what they were facing some time ago. So overall, yes, the numbers possibly disappointed in terms of margins as well as the domestic growth, which came in at around 5.2%. But the commentary with regards to the future growth looked largely positive, according to me. And separately, one additional point on Goa, they are still working with the US FDA. They are giving them regular updates with regards to the second section of observations which they've received for the Goa facility, and they're cautiously optimistic on it.
You know, we're cautiously optimistic. We got the EIR for the first set of 483s. We've been working with the FDA to get a response on the second set of 483s, and their response was that it's under active review at this point. I see the tentative approval as a positive, but I think we need to see a few more approvals before knowing that we're in the clear.
Prakash, do you buy into the management's confidence in the conference call? Because the street clearly wasn't happy with the pricing pressure and the fact that, the sequential dip in the US business that we saw.
Yeah, I think, see, the couple of things that happened when Lupin went into its earnings. One is the expectations were riding very high. So there was a huge build-up on the positive side, and then that sell-off was evident in the high volume, departure from the counter. Secondly, you also need to understand Dr. Reddy's has spooked the market in terms of the pricing pressure that could be prevalent going ahead. And unlike what the expectation was, management explained that the loss in margins was primarily a one-off. They've invested into the business, which will pay off in the coming quarters. So my sense is the last quarter is where Gavis also kind of starts playing up, and people will kind of maybe give it a little bit of a time correction. So the entire move in the last week of August, when the partial EIR was received for the observations in Goa, that's kind of come off. So, it's back to its level where it started off after that 1400 plus kind of a move. And from a valuation perspective also, it's not that expensive. It's trading at about 18 odd times. And then in its heydays, Lupin has been at 26, 27. So, you're not like talking about something which is really in a distress of sorts. But I would believe some buying would come back into the counter on the back of this optimism that the management has given. And they're not even sounding extremely exuberant or something. They sound fairly realistic. And I would go by what they believe is in the future.
So what's your large cap pharma pecking order right now? We'll hear from Sun and the others on Friday as well, of course.
Yes, so Cipla and Sun are critical to this thing because they form a critical part of the pecking order. So I would definitely believe Lupin is not the number one choice at this point. But if Sun and Cipla end up kind of coming with even decent kind of earnings, you'll probably have those top two picks, and then of course Lupin would probably be a clear third. But there's a huge gap after that, and then there's a whole host of smaller companies that are looking up. None of the large cap companies like Dr. Reddy's and Glenmark seem to be very favorable at this point. So pharma is going to go through a little bit of a churn in terms of pecking orders, and that's healthy for the market because you'll see some newer names come through.